You ever notice how the people who don't blend in at work are usually the ones everyone secretly talks about? They show up late, but somehow still get things done. They question authority, but end up being right half the time. They dress different, think different, speak like they forgot the script everyone else memorized. Meanwhile, the rest of us? We're experts at smiling in meetings we hate, nodding at ideas we disagree with, and pretending to be team players when our souls are slowly clocking out. Funny, isn't it? How the person who refuses to conform often looks like the problem, when maybe they're just the only one still awake. So let's ask the real question. Why do some people fit in so perfectly, while others, no matter how hard they try, just can't? Why are there people who refuse to play the corporate game, who walk into an office and treat it like a jungle expedition instead of a temple of productivity? We label them difficult, uncooperative, not a team player. But maybe that's not rebellion. Maybe that's a different kind of intelligence. See, conformity is comforting. It tells us, you belong here, you're safe. Just don't question too much. But the nonconformist mind? It doesn't crave safety, it craves truth. They see through the invisible rules everyone silently obeys. Don't outshine your boss. Don't say what you really think in meetings. Pretend you care about company values. The nonconformist looks around and thinks, wait, who decided this was normal? And that question, that one tiny question, is the beginning of freedom, and also the beginning of isolation. Because the moment you stop playing the game, the system starts playing you. You've probably seen it. That one coworker who doesn't join the gossip, doesn't fake enthusiasm for Friday happy hour, doesn't care about office politics or promotion ladders. They're not being antisocial. They're just tuned into a different frequency. They value meaning over medals, impact over image. And when the rest of the team competes for approval, they're quietly asking, what's the point? But here's the twist. That mindset, the non-conforming one, is both a superpower and a curse. Because in the short term, it makes life harder. You'll be misunderstood. You'll stand out when everyone else blends in. You'll question what others accept. And that makes people uncomfortable. But in the long run, that's how revolutions start. That's how innovation happens. That's how real growth begins, in the cracks of what everyone else calls normal. So what's actually happening here? Why do some people instinctively conform while others just can't? Psychology has a name for this. It's called social norm theory. It says that humans conform because we want acceptance and predictability. Our brains treat rejection like a physical wound. To the mind, social disapproval hurts just like getting punched in the face. That's why people play along, even when they hate the game. They're protecting themselves from pain. But the nonconformist? They're wired differently. Their self-worth doesn't depend on approval. They crave autonomy more than acceptance. They'd rather risk being disliked than live a life that doesn't feel like their own. And that, right there, is the dividing line between comfort and authenticity. Most people choose comfort. A few choose truth. So the question is, what happens when a truth seeker steps into a system built on conformity? When an independent thinker walks into an environment that rewards obedience over originality? That's where the real conflict begins. And it's not just external, it's psychological. Because surviving as a nonconformist in the modern workplace isn't just about being bold, it's about understanding how your mind works and how to protect it in a world that punishes difference. In the next part, we'll dive deeper. We'll explore why the brain craves conformity, what makes certain people immune to it, and how you can use that psychology to stay authentic, without burning out or getting exiled from the tribe. And let's rewind a bit. Imagine you're in a meeting, 10 people in a room. The boss says something that makes zero sense, but everyone nods. You know it's wrong, you feel it's wrong, but you still nod. Why? Because your brain is ancient, and it's terrified of being the only one who stands out. See, from an evolutionary point of view, being excluded from the group once meant death. No tribe, no fire, no protection. Our ancestors learned that belonging equals survival. So even in a modern office, like with Wi-Fi and kombucha on tap, your primal brain still whispers, blend in, don't make waves, stay safe. That's why conformity isn't weakness. It's biology. It's your mind trying to protect you from an ancient fear, rejection. But here's where it gets interesting. Nonconformist ones, the ones who don't bend to social pressure, their brains operate differently. Research shows that they have stronger activation in areas tied to internal validation, meaning they trust their own sense of right and wrong more than external approval. They don't need a round of applause to feel okay. They've built their self-esteem from the inside out. That's what makes them so rare and so powerful. Back in the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch ran a simple but brutal experiment. He showed people 3 lines on a card, one short, one medium, one long, and asked which line matched the sample. It was an easy question. The answer was obvious. But here's the twist. 9 people in the room were actors, secretly told to give the wrong answer. When it came to the real participant, the only one not in on the trick, something wild happened. 75% of them conformed at least once. They agreed with the group's wrong answer, and just to avoid standing out. No threats, no punishments, just the pressure of looking different. That's how deep our need to belong runs. Now, imagine being the one person in your company who questions the system. The one who doesn't clap at the vision statement. The one who doesn't laugh at the boss's not-so-funny jokes. You start to feel that same invisible pressure, that silent, what's wrong with you? Energy. And slowly, conformity starts to look like the easier option. Take a guy named Mark, brilliant analyst, creative thinker, but he never learned the rules. He challenges senior managers in meetings. He skips small talk. He questions why everyone does reports a certain way, and sometimes he's right. But here's the problem. People don't like mirrors that expose their routines. They'd rather protect the comfort of how it's always been done than face change. So what happens to Mark? He becomes the difficult one, the one HR quietly warns new hires about, until one day, he quits. And 6 months later, he starts a consulting firm, helping companies innovate. The exact thing they fired him for trying to do. Let's go deeper. Conformity isn't just about ideas, it's about energy. Every social group runs on unspoken energy exchange. You give compliance, you get acceptance. You give silence, you get stability. You give conformity, you get belonging. But nonconformists, they don't trade authenticity for approval, and that creates tension. Because when you don't play by the tribe's energy rules, people sense it, even subconsciously. They'll say things like, he's intense, she doesn't fit in, or the classic corporate code, not a culture fit. But what that really means is, you don't mirror our masks, and that makes us uncomfortable. And in a world obsessed with harmony, discomfort is treated like danger. So the workplace becomes this quiet battlefield between those who trade their authenticity for approval and those who refuse. And guess what? Both sides pay a price. The conformists lose themselves slowly, while the nonconformists lose acceptance immediately. One drowns in quiet resentment, the other walks alone. That's the trade-off. But here's the paradox. Every company says it wants innovation, creativity, thinking outside the box. Yet it quietly punishes the people who actually do. We say we love originality, but we only love it when it doesn't make us uncomfortable. And that, right there, is the heart of this psychology. The reason why true nonconformity in the workplace feels like swimming upstream. Because it is. You're not just fighting social pressure, you're fighting biology, culture, fear, the ancient programming in everyone's brain that whispers, don't stand out. So what happens when you do stand out? When you decide to stop pretending, stop performing, and start being fully yourself, even in the workplace? That's when the struggle begins. Not just external, from the group, but internal, from within you. In the next part, we'll explore that struggle. What happens inside the mind of the nonconformist? The psychological weight of being different, and how it can break or strengthen the people brave enough to stay authentic. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Nonconformity sounds romantic until you live it. It's not the cinematic version, where you walk out of the office to applause, sunlight, and a slow-motion soundtrack. No, it's quieter than that, more painful. It's showing up to meetings where everyone looks at you differently. It's realizing your ideas are met with silence while watered-down versions of them are praised months later. It's not rebellion. It's loneliness dressed in principle. Because when you stop conforming, you lose something most people don't even realize they've built their lives around: belonging. Every nonconformist in the workplace faces two invisible battles. 1. The external battle against the system. 2. The internal battle against the self. The external battle is obvious. It's the stares, the whispers, the performance reviews full of feedback. It's your creativity getting rephrased as disruption, your honesty mistaken for arrogance. But the internal battle, that's the one that eats at you. It's the voice that says, maybe they're right, maybe I am too much. It's the guilt that comes after every time you speak your truth, and the anxiety that follows every silence that meets it. You start questioning yourself. You start shrinking to fit in. You start dimming your light so you can stay inside the tribe's warmth. And in that moment, the nonconformist becomes the very thing they swore they'd never be: a follower pretending to be free. Let's talk about masks. Every workplace has them. The professional mask, the team player mask, the everything's fine mask. You wear it long enough and you start forgetting what your real face looks like. Psychologists call this emotional labor, the effort of faking emotions that don't match what you actually feel. And here's the kicker. People who constantly hide their true selves at work experience higher levels of burnout, anxiety, and depression. Why? Because pretending is exhausting. Authenticity is energy efficient. When you're authentic, your energy flows naturally. When you're pretending, your brain is constantly running background software, filtering every word, every gesture, every expression. It's mental drain disguised as being professional. So while conformity might look peaceful on the outside, inside, it's a slow leak, a quiet self-erasure that happens one polite smile at a time. But for nonconformists, the real danger isn't in being fake, it's in being torn. Half of you wants to stay true. The other half wants to survive. That's what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort of living two truths at once. I want to be authentic. I also want to be accepted. And the brain hates that tension, so it pushes you to choose one side. For most people, acceptance wins, but for the rare few, those whose identity depends on truth, authenticity wins even if it hurts. And make no mistake, it does hurt. Being the only one who speaks up feels brave in theory, but in practice, it can feel like exile. Here's what often happens next. The nonconformist starts to withdraw. They stop trying to explain themselves. They work alone. They become the lone wolf, efficient, independent, but emotionally detached. And that isolation becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because the more different you act, the more people treat you like you don't belong, which makes you act even more different. It's a psychological loop. Isolation, misunderstanding, more isolation. Until one day, the nonconformist either leaves the system or decides to beat it from within. And that decision, like to fight or flee, defines the rest of their career. Here's the bitter irony. The very people who challenge the system are the ones the system needs most. They're the innovators, the thinkers, the questioners. They're the ones who say, why are we still doing it this way? And push the world forward. But most organizations don't recognize them until they're gone. They hire them for their originality, then punish them for using it. They post quotes about thinking differently, then create cultures where everyone thinks the same. It's not malicious. It's just how comfort systems work. They resist disruption, even when it's healthy. But here's the hidden gift in all this struggle. The nonconformist isolation is also their incubation. Because when no one else agrees with you, you're forced to rely on your own compass. You learn to self-validate. You learn to lead yourself. And that's the foundation of true confidence. The kind that doesn't need applause to stand tall. Every visionary, every change maker, every leader who's ever reshaped an industry has walked through this fire. They were once the difficult employee, the unrealistic thinker, the bad fit, until the world caught up to their perspective. So, how do you survive that phase? How do you protect your authenticity without burning every bridge or becoming a workplace ghost? In the next part, we'll talk about the tools, the mindset, the boundaries, the quiet strategies that let you stay true and still thrive inside systems not built for people like you. Because being a nonconformist doesn't mean being reckless. It means being rooted and learning how to stand firm without burning out. All right, we've talked about the pain, the loneliness, the mental tug-of-war of being different. Now let's talk about power, because nonconformity, when harnessed correctly, isn't chaos. It's clarity. It's the ability to see through illusions that most people mistake for reality and still find your place within it. The goal isn't to fight the system, it's to navigate it without losing yourself. So, how do you do that? How do you stay authentic in a workplace that rewards compliance more than truth? Here's the mindset. You don't have to rebel to be real. You just have to stay aligned. The first step is simple, but rare. Know what you actually stand for. Not your company's values, not your industry's buzzwords, yours. Most people conform because they don't know their own internal compass. They follow rules not out of belief, but out of uncertainty. So sit with yourself. Ask, what are the 3 values I'd never betray, even if it costs me something? Maybe it's truth. Maybe it's creativity. Maybe it's integrity. Once you know that, everything gets easier, because decisions stop being about approval and start being about alignment. When you're clear on your values, you can navigate any workplace, no matter how rigid, without being swallowed by it. Here's the truth no one tells you. Not every hill is worth dying on. The nonconformist's instinct is to fight every system, to correct every flawed process, to question every rule. But that burns you out. Fast. Because the goal isn't to fight the system, it's to outlast it. Learn to recognize where your voice creates change and where it just drains you. Pick your moments with precision. When you speak, make it matter. And when you stay silent, make it strategic, not fearful. The most effective rebels are disciplined. They know that silence isn't surrender. It's saving energy for the battles that count. Even the strongest minds need connection. You can't survive long as a lone wolf. You need a few, even just 2. People who get it. People who remind you you're not crazy for seeing things differently. People who recharge you when the world tries to flatten your edges. Find them inside your workplace if you can. And if you can't, find them outside. Mentors, friends, fellow creators, anyone who speaks your language of authenticity. Because no matter how independent you are, the human brain still needs belonging. It's not weakness, it's wiring. So don't reject connection. Just be intentional with who you connect to. Here's something few nonconformists understand. You can be authentic without being transparent. You don't have to announce every disagreement. You don't have to prove how different you are. Think of authenticity like fire. Too small and it dies, too big and it burns everything around it. Strategic camouflage means understanding how to blend without becoming invisible. It's saying what needs to be said in the language people can hear. That's not manipulation, it's translation. You're not watering down your truth. You're packaging it so it can actually land. Because influence isn't about shouting louder, it's about speaking smarter. Here's the core of it all. To survive as a nonconformist, you need to build an internal source of validation so strong that external approval becomes optional. That means learning to measure your worth by your own metrics, not by performance reviews, not by likes, not by who praises or criticizes you. Ask yourself, Did I act in alignment with my truth today? If the answer is yes, that's your win. You'll find that once you stop chasing validation, people start giving it to you anyway, because confidence that doesn't beg for attention naturally attracts it. This is where things turn. Being different isn't a flaw, it's leverage, because conformity makes people predictable. And predictability is the death of creativity. When you see patterns others can't, when you question what others accept, you hold power, the power of fresh perspective. Use it. Use it to innovate, to lead, to spark uncomfortable conversations that lead to real progress. Don't waste your difference trying to fit in. Spend it reshaping the spaces you walk into. That's how change actually happens. Quietly, consistently, from the inside out. One last piece. Protect your mental energy. Nonconformity is draining work. You're constantly translating your thoughts, filtering reactions, walking the edge between truth and tolerance. So you need recovery rituals. That could be solitude, nature, writing, meditation. Anything that lets you decompress and reconnect with yourself. Think of it like emotional muscle recovery. Even warriors rest between battles. Even truth tellers need silence between storms. When you start applying these values, boundaries, connection, strategy, self-trust, something shifts. You stop seeing yourself as the misfit and start realizing you're the blueprint. Because real leadership doesn't come from fitting in. It comes from staying centered when everyone else is swayed by approval. And when that shift happens, when you finally stop apologizing for being different, that's when nonconformity transforms from a struggle into a superpower. In the next and final part, we'll talk about that transformation. How the nonconformist mindset not only changes your career, but your entire way of existing in the world. Something changes the moment you stop fighting to fit in. It's subtle at first. The anxiety quiets down. You stop rehearsing every sentence before you speak. You stop checking faces for approval, and one day you realize you've built a kind of peace most people spend their whole careers chasing. The peace of being unapologetically yourself. See, true nonconformity isn't loud. It's not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's quiet alignment. It's walking into a room and knowing that even if no one agrees with you, you still belong there, because you belong to yourself. At first, nonconformity feels like rebellion. Like you're pushing back against everything and everyone. But as you mature, it becomes something deeper. It becomes integrity. Rebellion says, I won't follow your rules. Integrity says, I live by my own. And that's where the true transformation begins. When your actions stop being a reaction to others and start being a reflection of your values. Because that's the real evolution of the nonconformist, from outsider to original, from critic to creator, from rebel to leader. Here's what happens next. People start noticing, not because you're louder, but because you're real. Authenticity is magnetic. It cuts through the noise of corporate politeness like a spark in a fog. Suddenly, others start confiding in you, trusting you, following your example. Because deep down, everyone craves what you've found, the freedom to stop performing. You become a mirror for the courage they've buried, and that's what makes authentic individuals quietly powerful. They don't demand respect, they inspire it. Here's the thing. Every cultural shift in history started with one person who refused to nod along. Someone who said, this doesn't make sense. This could be better. This isn't true. And they weren't popular. They weren't praised. Most of them were misunderstood, right? At least at first. But over time, their authenticity became contagious. Their courage became culture. That's how innovation happens. Not from people who fit in, but from those who stand still when the world moves in the wrong direction. So, when you choose authenticity at work, when you choose truth over comfort, you're not just protecting yourself. You're planting a seed, a signal to others that it's okay to be real. And eventually, those small signals add up. They become movements. They reshape workplaces, teams, even industries. But the greatest change doesn't happen outside. It happens inside you. When you stop conforming, you stop living by default. You stop being the echo of other people's expectations and start becoming the author of your own reality. You realize you don't need to find your voice. You've always had it. You just needed the courage to use it. And the more you use it, the lighter life feels. You stop fearing rejection because you're no longer seeking permission. You stop chasing validation because you've learned the truth. The only person you ever needed to impress was yourself. So maybe the goal was never to be the loudest in the room. Maybe it was to be the one who speaks with truth when everyone else speaks with fear. Maybe it was never about breaking the rules, but about writing new ones. Ones that make space for authenticity, creativity, and humanity to coexist. Because at the end of the day, every workplace, every system, every culture is just a reflection of the people inside it. And when one person chooses to live truthfully, it gives everyone else permission to do the same. That's the real power of nonconformity. Not rebellion, not resistance, but renewal. A quiet revolution that starts within and ripples outward into everything you touch. So, if you're that person, the one who doesn't quite fit in, who questions what others accept, who feels like you were built for something slightly off script, don't shrink. You're not broken. You're just ahead of your time. Stay grounded, stay kind, stay real. Because while everyone else is busy trying to belong, you're here to be.